Hello, Paul Bloom, publisher of the Small Potatoes newsletter, famous psychologist and writer. How are you?
I am good. Hello, Robert Wright, publisher of the Non-Zero newsletter, podcaster, public intellectual, scholar.
Extraordinaire, I might add, at the end of all
Extraordinary
that.
for that. Renaissance man.
That. So, well, we're entering a bold experiment in podcasting today, Paul.
It's like a time machine. We'll explain this. It's like a time machine.
It's like a time machine. So we're recording this at least 2 weeks before it's going to be posted. Now, people should not tune out when they hear that for fear that it won't be topical. I mean, obviously it won't be topical, but it'll be more interesting than topical, right?
The word is evergreen.
Evergreen.
It is
We're taping an evergreen to accommodate Paul's schedule, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to go there. I really like you a lot.
I'm going to Asia to travel through many countries to promote Small Potatoes, my Substack, meeting with potatoes in Thailand and Bali. This is not true. I am going to Asia, but it has nothing to do with my Substack, which is not at the international promotion level. But the 12-hour time difference would make a discussion difficult, so we decided to get one in right before I leave.
Yeah. So we're gonna, for one thing I'm gonna do is we should make some predictions about what the world will be like in 2 or 3 weeks. And then aside from that, we should deal in, I think, timeless verities and things like that. It'll just be fascinating regardless of when people hear them, right?
That's right. So the predictions, I mean, it could be that 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, the world will be smoldering and cinders are in the midst of a nuclear war, and there will be us predicting things. And
the few remaining people will be huddled around their smartphones, straining to hear us, hoping for a message of hope. And I have bad news for them, Paul. You're fucked. You just had a nuclear war.
Yeah.
You should have died during it because the rest ain't going to be fun. That's my message to them, Paul.
If that was your prediction and there was a nuclear war, you'd be hailed.
Man, I'd be on top of the world, right?
You nail it. Yeah.
In fact, I'd be dead. But
I realized that the worst predictions to make, well, this is very meta because we haven't made them yet. The worst prediction to make is that nothing will happen, or this will stay the same. There will be no new news about Kamala Harris, whatever. Because then if something happens, it's very embarrassing. On the flip side, if you make a prediction that something will happen and nothing will happen, nobody cares.
There are a lot of ways to lose in this prediction game, Paul. That's why few dare to do what we're about to do.
My wife
are we about to do it, or are we gonna put that off? So,
we're gonna put it off. We're gonna put it off. We're gonna talk about doing it.
We're gonna think about talking about doing it. Yes.
But my wife sent me a tweet she saw from Nate Silver, and she hadn't been following this. Says Nate Silver seems very angry, and he was talking to some guy, and apparently they have had a feud of some sort. And he says to him, if you, something to the effect of, if you had any confidence in your claim, you put your money where your mouth is, and say, you're not betting on it. And I don't know what I think of that.
Some people don't bet. I was talking to Tyler Cowan about a year ago, and I was saying, I think AI may, I'm not like a hardcore doomer, but I think we could be in for some turbulent times and so on. And he says, well, these doom people, why haven't they shorted the stock market? I'm like, well, not everybody does that kind of stuff,
I'm going to make a crazy digression, which is when I was a kid, the conservative synagogue where I went to shut down, and I had to go to some sort of synagogue, and my family had to. There was a reform, much more liberal one. We'd never go to that. So we went to a Lubavitch one, which is a very religious sect of Judaism, very orthodox. And I got invited to the rabbi's house, and I'm with it. And the rabbi is messianic. He believed that Rebbe Schneerson, rabbi in New York, was the Messiah, essentially. And when he dies, the world would come to an end. And he was an old, sickly man. And we're talking, he's telling me the world's going to end soon. And I wanted to ask him, do you have a 30-year mortgage? Or do you save for your kids' college education? The question of putting your money where your mouth is, I kind of agree with that in principle. If you really believe in AI doom, maybe you'd want to
So you're with Tyler. If you haven't shorted the market, you're not serious about AI doom. I mean, there's a time frame problem here.
There's a
There are
time frame
people
problem.
who think they have reason to think that sooner or later, the AI is going to put us all in gooey
Right.
tubes like in the Matrix, but they don't know when.
That's right.
Because
That's
it
right.
depends on this question. There's these two big questions: onset and takeoff. Did you know that this is the way these AI
Yeah.
people talk? Where when you get to the AGI, which may be the threshold of superintelligence, then once you get there, how fast does the superintelligence take
Yeah.
off?
Yeah. There's some quote from Hemingway about bankruptcy. It happens slowly and then
And
very
then all
quickly.
at once.
And all at once. That's right. That's right. Yeah, I think in some cases, if somebody really said the world was going to end very soon, or within the next 5 years, they don't know when, and yet financially acted as if they expected to retire in 30, 40 years,
Hmm.
I think you would question them. You could question the sincerity of their views. But for the most part, I just sometimes think the betting talk is a way people with a lot of money could bully people with less money. You know, may,
That's a
may,
good point.
may
It's easy to talk that way when you're,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm talking to some, I don't know, Nate Silver, Elon Musk. He says, you want to bet $100,000 on that? Now, I might be pretty confident, but I don't know if I have $100,000 to lose if I'm
Yeah.
wrong.
Now, I do think it's a good intellectual kind of exercise to ask yourself, well, what kind of odds would I take on this bet as a way of figuring out like how likely you think
Hmm.
something is. It's a good way to operationalize the question of how likely you think something is. Um, like
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. That's right. I think it's reasonable to ask people what are your odds when you say that's going to happen?
Hmm.
And I think to some extent, if there are professional pundits, we'll bracket the question at you. Whether you see yourself as a professional pundit who are in the prediction business, I think it's fair game to look at their record. But
Totally, totally.
but
It should be done more often. I
people,
mean, let me just give you one example.
go
No
ahead.
one will ever guess that this is where I'm going to go with this, but for example, foreign policy. Like, if you enthusiastically recommended invading Iraq, maybe you shouldn't be continuing to control the entire foreign policy conversation. But I digress. Go ahead, Paul.
No, that's fair. That's fair. If you,
There is zero accountability in the world of foreign affairs.
yeah, yeah,
It's
and
a
there should be,
community of people who keep one another in power, regardless of how wrong they are.
but it has
But
to be it has to be systematic. Um, there's this line about somebody who predicted 9 of the last 2 recessions.
mhm.
And some people make tons of predictions and then leap on the ones that were right. So I have a friend who predicted that Trump would win the first, and it was right. He made a big deal. He was right. He sent emails about it. He was right. But he also is made a whole lot of other predictions that did not turn out to be right. He'd win the next one. That RFK would, all this stuff. So
Mhm.
you got to be monitored. You can't just go back and cherry pick the ones you got right.
No, and we're all probably a little guilty of that. I may have gotten a war or two wrong here that I've forgotten. Wars are easy to forget. I just don't
Um,
remember them.
my son, well, actually, one of my younger son, once I once made a prediction to him. I this is going to happen, and he looked at me and said, "Yeah, Dad," and then he proceeded to list 10 predictions I had made that turned out to be,
Whoa.
Obama's
Yeah.
impeachment, all these things like that. I was very touched that he listened. I was so
Were you
moved.
touched? You're a
I
good
kind of
parent.
was. I kind of
This
it
is the
was
thing about kids. They definitely keep track on that side of your ledger for sure.
your haters are your closest readers.
And they are
Actually,
your
that's a
kids.
horrible quote at this point. It's from Freddie DeBoer. I like that quote.
Your
And
haters, well, that's true.
yeah,
It's
no,
true.
nobody
They're
focuses on
motivated readers.
exactly, exactly. Okay, you want to do the predictions now? You got predictions?
I don't know that I do. Well, okay. For starters, I am going to predict that the presidential race has tightened considerably. Now, when I looked this morning at the prediction market, last time I looked, it was they were giving Trump 60% odds. This was chances of winning. This was on Polymarket, and that was down from it had been kind of 63, 64, 65, 62. So I think Kamala I think she did well in a Michigan poll or something. But I'm predicting that he is going to be below, by the time this comes out, which may be only 2 weeks from now, but I'm going to predict he's going to be at 55% or lower. I think it's ultimately going to be a tight race. And right now, I'm going to check and see if things have changed since they were 60%. But let the record show they were 60% when I made the prediction of 55. They're still 60. Okay, so Trump is at 60. Kamala is at 39. I'm saying he's down to 55 or below by the time this airs in 2 or 3 weeks. I just feel the Kamala energy. Do you feel the Kamala energy, Paul?
I do. I do.
It's contagious. It's infectious.
It is what they have. I'm on social media too much, and what her supporters have done very cleverly is take the very same videos used to mock her, and saying,
And they're
"This is
memeing
great."
the shit out of that.
And you see it a lot of times, and you start to get it.
Coconut tree. Go ahead, make fun of falling out of coconut tree, Donald Trump.
It's a
Good luck, little jujitsu meme here for you.
Her
right?
laugh. Her laugh.
Her laugh.
No, I saw a clip.
Fine. I like her laugh.
Her laugh. I saw a clip of her talking to Drew Barrymore, I think. In this mortifying interview. This is not Harris's fault. Where Drew Barrymore leans over and says, "America needs a Kamala." And
that's nice.
And Harris looks like mortified, but she's talking.
She's trying to figure out. Wait, is this good or bad? Is this like
it's
It's
funny.
But
no
there's
one's
a little look. That's not. It has its upside and its downside.
But anyway,
because when you say, "Who do you want answering the call at 3 a.m. when we have a nuclear war on the way?" you don't say Kamala, right? But America has been through some hard times. We could use a little like calming effect of the kind you get from Kamalas,
Freud sometimes comes up in these things, and it's always you want a stern father, but no, maybe you want a loving mother.
You can have both. You can have both.
You could have both. Anyway, so her laugh comes up in this discussion, and Harris says, "I have a big laugh. I don't have a little titter.
Right.
I have a
own
big,
it. Own your laugh.
Own it. Trump is still okay. Here's who should be punished. Here's who should be punished. Not punished, but here's who should lose some credibility. Everybody who said Trump has been transformed. We're going to see a new Donald Trump. We did not see a new Donald Trump. We now, I see clips of his rallies. We see the same Donald Trump. Crude, unpleasant, vicious, funny. Same guy. He has not been transformed in any way.
Yeah, the argument is between people who say the new Donald Trump lasted for the first 25 minutes of his convention speech, and people like me who say it didn't even last that long. It was so self-involved, the assassination stuff.
I think as he was being hustled to the car, he was making sexist comments to the Secret Service officers and ridiculing Joe Biden. I don't know.
Now here's a question. Have you noticed that suddenly the question of whether it was really a bullet that hit his ear got revived?
Yeah, back to shrapnel of some sort. Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Okay, here's my prediction. It will have been decisively revolved in favor of the bullet theory. That's a prediction, but go ahead.
I had thought that picture of the bullet going towards his head was in fact the bullet that hit him in the ear. Is that not true?
No, because the bullet was past his head. The streak in the New York Times picture is on the other side of his head.
You're right.
So that seems to be the Times actually in response to the newfound doubts about what hit him, which I guess were raised partly by Christopher Wray, who either is now or was the director of the FBI. He said before Congress, it kind of surprised me. He said, "Well, we still don't really know whether it was, something shattered or whether it was a bullet or what." I didn't realize there was much uncertainty. I don't understand where the shattered stuff is supposed to have come from, since I think the teleprompters were A, on the other side of his head, and B, not shattered. I mean, so I'm not sure where the theory comes from. But in any event, the Times had this video that made it reasonably clear that the first shot hits the ear, and then he is just, if you look at that picture of the bullet with the streak, his hand is just starting to come up, and that bullet is whizzing past him. So that's not the bullet. His reflexes may be faster than the average 78-year-old or whatever, but I don't think they're that fast, right? That's the second bullet. And they even had the audio, waves.
That's right.
So it seems pretty clear to me. But look, I'd love to find out that you know, the whole thing was faked or something. That would be wonderful. But I
That
don't
would
think it
be
was.
that would be something.
I mean,
Um,
I do look,
you,
maybe I should save this for overtime because it's one of those clips where if they look at it in isolation, they say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Because there is one question I would raise, but I'm not going to raise that. So go ahead.
oh, okay. I'm
I'm going to raise it on the other side of the paywall. All the great stuff is on the other side of the paywall. That's our whole business
one
model.
reason why I'm so happy to talk to you on a regular basis is I get to be on the other side of the paywall to hear
Yeah.
all of the crazy shit.
For
Honestly,
free. For free. You get to follow me there for free, Paul. How many
I
people
am.
can say that?
It's true. It's true. So I could think of nothing that matters less than whether it was a bullet that went through his hair or a piece of shrapnel. Still an assassination attempt. He still, did his fight. It's still.
Yeah.
But I guess from a sort of theological point of view, it matters because there's a narrative that God diverted a bullet. Nah, shrapnel. It's God diverted shrapnel. God diverted a piece of a teleprompter. Seems less
Maybe
of a
God
miracle.
diverted the bullet to the teleprompter.
Maybe.
Which is a pretty decisive intervention, right? Like you bend the path of a bullet.
It's true. It's true. I find we've talked about this before. I find the whole God did this to be, besides the fact it's incoherent, honestly grotesque given that somebody died. So God saved Donald Trump, but didn't save this firefighter guy. Was God tired? Did God get only one chance to divert something?
Well, the answer is God thinks Donald Trump is more important than I mean, that's the answer, right?
That's the answer.
The whole idea that Trump was saved by God is that he's like divinely ordained to do great things.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen with the JD Vance having sex with a sofa story?
Now I miss this meme. I've been working the last Thursday and Friday are always kind of hellish for me. So explain the couch sex thing. What is going on with JD Vance? What, and of course, by the time this airs, people will welcome this stroll down memory lane because the memes go by so fast. It's like, remind me what was going on 2 or 3 weeks ago.
This is like, what was it? It's a yes, no from this podcast where they would, I forget the name of it. But I will explain this as best I understand. I actually disapprove. So somebody said on Twitter, Hillbilly Elegy has a discussion of when, with the aid of a latex glove, JD Vance had intercourse with a sofa while he was a young man, a teenager.
Wait, he told that story?
He did not. It is not true.
Shoot.
But since Hillbilly Elegy is a story of a kid growing up, a young man growing up, it is the sort of thing. When I first saw it, I said, that's embarrassing story. But people tell stories. Obama talked about drug use, and people tell stories and these things. They don't expect it later on to bite them in the ass. Entirely untrue. This does not stop people from having a lot of very, very funny memes. And now, as of like an hour ago, this is all 2 to 3 weeks from now, people are going to say, I don't know of any of that stuff. It's just past. But JD Vance posted something about, said, this is how awful the internet is. And it's a little sort of news story thing of something of a woman who had sex with a dolphin. This is terrible. But you could
look, Peter Singer has actually opined on this whole question of whether sex with like your pets is bad, assuming they enjoy it and you enjoy it. And I think he would say that a more nuanced answer than you're giving is in order. I'm not saying that. Go ahead.
Yes. I actually entirely agree with Peter Singer's argument, which is it's very hypocritical to get so upset about bestiality, given the terrible things we do in animals. Bestiality would be the least of it.
That is certainly a good point. Yes.
But apparently, in order to find his image, he had to search. You see, it's highlighted for dolphin woman. Now, there's all sorts of reasons. He probably heard of this and then searched for it to find it, whatever. But he's the subject of some ridicule. He also, by the way, this is getting less and less evergreen by the moment, but he also had these comments about childless people.
Now, I saw that. I was wondering, was that taken out of context? Does he say, like, before or after that video clip, like, now this is just a thought experiment or blah, blah, blah? Because tell us what he says. It seems a little radical.
I don't know. And he made some further comments where he seemed to sort of walk it back a little bit.
Okay.
But he was making, in some way, the most generous version of it was that to encourage people to have children. Later on, he said we want to have workplaces that are supportive of working fathers and working mothers. That's all nice. But in this quote, he said something to the effect of, one way that we could have children could vote, and one way to get children to vote is they could vote through their parents. And doesn't it make sense that a parent should have more of a say in the country, the fate of the country, than a non-parent? Combined with calling Harris, I think, a childless cat lady or something.
Did he say that?
I think he did say that.
I heard the part about, parents with children should get more votes than adults who don't have children. And he seemed very serious during the clip. You would think he modified it, but, I think that's not a great idea.
He called her, yes. He called her childless cat lady.
Well, that's like crude. That's like Trump level crude. I mean, shouldn't
it is Trump level crude. Despite the fact, actually, like if she was childless, you shouldn't call her that anyway. But she has two stepchildren.
Yeah,
Good
don't point, Paul.
I don't think, from a purely strategic point of view, I don't think
it helps him.
Mocking people who either by choice or not by choice don't have biological children is the way to go.
Yeah, for all he knows, she tried and couldn't. What does he know?
Yeah, I'm not one of your fancy pants consultants, but it seems bad.
Right.
Anyway.
No, you don't know the circumstances at all. I mean, that's like ridiculous. That's Trump level. He should be careful about how close he gets to Trump level, I think.
He should. And, I saw Pete Buttigieg doing his thing now, which is making very incisive, warm, well-articulated comments about things. And when he was asked about this, because apparently he was attacked too for being childless. And he said something very reasonable, which is, why are people making savage comments about other people's families? Which,
Good question.
Okay, here's a prediction. Are you willing to actually, when will we know? You know this sort of thing. When will we know who the vice president nominee will be?
Well, they formally unveil it at the convention. Usually there are reliable reports a couple of days early, but often not much before that. So it could be like you don't know for sure until like the first day of the convention, and then it happens formally the third day or something. And yeah, well, that's a good prediction. Of course, it's a good prediction in any event, whether it's happened by the time this airs or not. I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
I was thinking Josh Shapiro. I'm going to look at the betting on this. I was thinking Josh Shapiro, but he's taking heat on the left for his Israel.
A new Republic article that you approvingly cited.
David Cleon, who used to work for me.
Really? Who didn't used to work for you?
Everyone who's anyone used to work for me. Isaac Chotiner, famous interviewer.
Like you have a list of life advice, and I say, never get interviewed by this guy. He's quite brutal.
It's like Mike Wallace is gone, but there's one moral of the Mike Wallace story that remains. There are people you should not do interviews with.
He has a gift of having people say the most stupid things. I don't know how he does it.
Well, being interviewed in the New Yorker is tempting. It's the same with Mike Wallace. Who doesn't want to be on 60 Minutes, right? It's tempting.
Yeah, I don't. not if that's the consequence. So what did the betting market say?
Oh, that's an excellent question. This may take me a second. Let me go back to the politics page.
So the Shapiro is finding a lot of
Shapiro's dropped. I think he was at 38 when did you and I visit this question?
I don't think so.
I did with somebody. He's now down to 24%. Mark Kelly is up at 37%.
He's the astronaut?
Yeah. Which reminds me of do you know, I'm always recommending this podcast feed, Alice from Queens. Do you follow Alice from Queens?
No, but I've heard this mentioned.
She just is this, very creatively funny, but also kind of a cute person. And she did this this tweet. It gets back to the JD Vance meme. I mean, I'm not saying this is funny. It's just offbeat in a creative way. She, he was an astronaut, and she said, this guy was in space for 50 days. He screwed, except she didn't use the word screwed. It was a little crude in that. Screwed something weirder than a couch. I'm not saying that's laugh out loud funny. It's just like, it's just such an offbeat take on
so mean to say this about an astronaut. I don't.
Oh, she's ruthless. She's ruthless. I love her. She's also anonymous. We don't know who she really is.
Yeah, I don't know anything about him besides he's an astronaut. I don't think so. So if the safest prediction is it will be a white male governor, who will help electorally. That's the thing.
Wait, isn't there one senator in the running? But yeah, I think white male is the balance that people think would make sense. Tim Walz has got a good vibe of Minnesota, man. He can bring it.
Would it be so irrational for her to choose like Gretchen Whitmore?
I believe it would be a very big gamble. Not impossible that it would pay off, but big gamble.
Yeah.
That's my take.
What
do you is this like, here's the question. In Canada, do they talk almost as much about American politics as about Canadian politics?
In a circle, I am in exactly the same amount.
You mean the circle of people who have spent most of their adult lives in the United States, like you?
Well, a lot of academics come from the States, but yeah, Canadians just talk about American politics all the time. And we watch the same things. It's when there's an election coming up, then things get a bit more Canadian centric. But the system, we have a very short election cycle, like it's a few months, and then we start to pay attention.
Well, Paul, I have some bad news for you. We do not talk about Canadian politics in America. The few people who know that Canada's prime minister is named Trudeau think his first name is Pierre. That's how bad it is. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I know. I don't take, one reason I don't take offense is because Canadians don't know much about this either. It is weird to be in a country where most of our focus is on another country.
Yeah. Well, so I interrupted you, and you were going to say something not related to Canadians talking about politics. I'm sorry. And now it has escaped your mind.
It's escaped my mind. I'll watch 2 weeks from now.
This is how Joe Biden's career started unraveling, Paul. He couldn't remember something, and then it just steamrolled him. So be careful.
It's the worst thing. You're doing like a podcast like we're doing, and you're talking, and I think of something really clever. And then you're done talking, and I forget it. So I started to write it down. I had a little thing here. So I wrote down like theological implications of bullet, so that when you were done, that I could.
And then we talked about that.
Yeah, so that's when it goes well. That's when it goes well. Truman Show. This is not hardly a segue. I guess it's just we're going to talk about.
Well, we can start this. We may. Well, let me wait. Let me think. So what? I actually wrote things. Speaking of writing things down,
I wrote here Truman Show.
Yeah, we were gonna. I just want to see if there was. I have this whole Paul Bloom document. Whoops.
How much would I give to see that?
You think you'd give a lot? Because you already know what's on it. I mean, the darker,
it's the
darker parts of your past. Okay, there are people who pay more than you would.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess So.
By the way, one of your commentators pointed out correctly that one of us, I think it was me, got the director of the Truman Show, who's we're confused with the guy who directed RoboCop.
Yeah,
and that is correct. I made a mistake.
It's nice of you to own up to that.
I'm just getting ahead of things, getting ahead of it. As part of the political strategies, make it just a one-day news story.
And you know what Jesse Rimler, also a commenter, said, Paul?
Tell me.
He said, as a big Bob Mickey fan, I want to say how delightful the Bob Paul duo has been.
Oh,
It may surpass the parrot room. Don't tell Mickey, Paul. It's a
Oh, I'm
very
touched.
fragile ego.
I'm
I
touched.
eagerly click on the episode when I see it's you two.
Oh, that's very nice.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out
I got something wrong. I say it wasn't quite wrong, but commenter Jerry Walsh reminds me that I think what I said was, what was Pete? Pete Buttigieg was mayor of Gary, Indiana. I think I kind of had that uncertain intonation. Anyway, South Bend.
Oh, South Bend, that's
home
right.
of the leafy Notre Dame campus.
Okay. The director of the Truman Show, by the way, directed Master and Commander,
Which I haven't seen.
which is tons of fun. Russell Crowe, Paul Bellamy, maybe. Hugely fun nautical adventure movie, which is just full of good spirits and adventure and twists and humor, and was surprisingly good. I'm not sure how well it did in the box office, but it was great.
Yeah, I don't see enough movies.
You don't.
But the way we got in this Truman Show thing was back when, we were agreeing that life increasingly seemed like a simulation because so much weird shit was happening, starting with that bullet that grazed Trump's ear. I mean, have you seen the computer simulation of his head movement? I don't know if it's true, but I mean, that's like, come on, God, cut it out, And
we both watched that show where things split into alternative realities, and I can't keep thinking there's another reality half a second afterwards where he didn't turn his head, and I'm wondering where do people who went in that reality? What is their life right now?
Trumpless. It's Trumpless.
Trumpless, but it may be it may be a particular terrible reality right now.
It could be. It could be. I mean, oh God, I shudder to think.
People would not take it well.
What? There are people who would not take it well, and almost all of them own at least one gun.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if under that world there'd be retaliatory assassinations of Democrat figures.
Who knows?
Who knows?
I don't know, but there would be. It seems to me there would almost certainly be disturbances, and it would kind of surprise me if nobody wound up dying. I mean, the George Floyd protests involved deaths. But yeah, no, we're lucky. I think there are people who think otherwise, and I always try to convince them that no, this would be a worse world.
So a lot of people talk about the idea that we're living in a simulation. A lot of people talk. There's sort of a way of talking, online in the real world, as if this is like an HBO series. Like, wow, that was a twist, or really weird to bring in this character at this point. And I kind of like that. I see that. I often see the world as if it's plotted that way. I think, and the Truman Show asked the question, what if that was right? What if your whole life is basically you're the main character of a television show? And
but you don't know it.
But you don't know it. Unlike other versions of simulation theory, it's not that you're only conscious being in the world, which is one version of it, which is kind of a terrible version. I mean, terrible emotionally. But in Truman Show,
did you say of you being the only conscious being in the world?
Yeah.
I just thought it at the end. Can we do a little digression? I was looking at my dog, and I thought, if somebody totally convinced me that he has no subjective experience, doesn't have the feelings I attribute to him, and that nobody did, no beings did other than, I mean, I was thinking I'd have to kill myself. It would be so freaky. Right?
Apparently, a friend of mine told me this, and I'll get back on this, but apparently there are people who have convinced themselves they are living in a simulation and have done things like kill people that they love, believing that this is just,
wouldn't surprise me. I mean, there are these weird mental disorders, like, is it Capgras syndrome, where you think that suddenly you think your wife is an imposter?
Yeah.
So you can do these mind shifts. I mean, you do think it's like something to be them, but you think they've done something with your actual wife.
Yeah. It used to be maybe she's been replaced by an alien or a demon, or she's somebody else in disguise. One theory of this by the neuroscientist Ramachandran is that you have two systems of recognizing people. And one system is a sort of explicit system. So I look at you, you match my memory, so you're Robert Wright. Another one's an emotional system where I have a certain positive feeling when I see you, just this warm feeling. And in some cases, the emotional system could get snipped, could get cut off. So what happens, he suggests, is you look at the person you love the most in the world and you recognize, oh, that's my wife, but you feel nothing. And the way to resolve it is to say, it's not her. It's some replacement. So you have that. You have I think Fengoli's delusion, which is that people are following you around doing nice things for you. You have Cotard's, which is very similar to Capgras, where you think you're dead. And apparently,
what was the one right before then?
I'm trying to remember the exact.
Well, that's okay.
Symptoms.
We can stick with the dead one. You think you're dead and you've come back to this fake world, or what?
It's not well worked out. People just say, I'm dead. And one way is there's two ways to interpret the lack of emotional feeling you get from other people. One is it's them, and that's Capgras. The other one, it's you, and that's Cotard's. So you say, I'm dead. And you get there's this part of this cluster of weird neurological disorders which don't make much sense. Like there's cases of neglect where some people say, I have no left hand, I have no left side of the body. And then you say, well, what's this? And you say, it's just a mirror. There's a mirror reflecting stuff at me.
Yeah.
When faced with these perceptual, sensory, emotional feelings, we then tell stories about them that aren't entirely coherent.
Yeah. What I think Capgras syndrome points to is that how our emotions actually infuse our perceptions of everything. And if you took the emotions away, the perceptions would be different. I think you'd even look at your car and say, that's not my car. I got into this in my Buddhism book in talking about the Buddhist concept of emptiness.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I think that's right. By the way, I looked this up. It's Fregoli's delusion. And this is a rare delusion characterized by the belief that familiar people are presenting themselves disguised as others. So it's not that your wife's not your wife. It's that you just see some stranger walk and say, oh, that must be my wife disguising herself as somebody else. And I think it's the same sort of short circuiting, where in this case, you're getting a feeling of familiarity and love, and that's how you resolve it. But yeah, wow. I think all of our feelings are normally infused with emotion. That's right.
Well, you mean our perceptions?
Sorry, our perceptions are infused with.
Paul has a radical claim. Our feelings are infused with feeling.
Oh, God, this is going to get a clip, and I'm going to get mocked from it.
No, we love you, Paul.
You just edit it out. You've never edited things out.
We don't love you that much.
No. Have you ever edited something out?
Yes. Ben Smith, this was back in Blogging Heads days. Ben Smith, who was then at Politico, this is like 20 years ago, had a dialogue, a Blogging Heads dialogue with Glenn Greenwald.
Okay, yeah.
And identified like a guy who had been the owner of Politico or something, or anyway, identified him as being dead, and he wasn't dead. This was like a guy who had the power to get Ben Smith fired, probably at Politico, if he really wanted to pull the levers, because he was still very much alive and kind of played a big role in owning Politico. And so he asked us to take that out. And I actually asked, I got Glenn's okay, because we had a pretty strict policy, like if anything gets cut out at the request of either person, the other person has to.
That makes sense.
Off.
That makes sense. I can imagine sometimes sometimes you do podcast interviews where they're totally mellow. You say it wrong, just say it again. We'll take it out, just say it again and whatever. Or just
this is reality TV, which brings us back to the Truman Show. However, I think it's probably about time we went into overtime anyway.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about the Truman Show and other stuff, including, are we going to talk a little bit about Nick Bostrom and Utopias or something?
Maybe. We'll see.
And simulations, which also brings us to Bostrom. My conversation with Bostrom is going to air next week. Now, Non-Zero Newsletter members, as we call people that some people call paid subscribers, already have access to the Nick Bostrom conversation and get access to the overtime segment. But folks, there's another way to get access to the overtime segment. Paul, what would that be?
If you subscribe to Small Potatoes. And the moment you subscribe, the moment you become a paid subscriber, you'll get a link that will link you to a page that will have links itself to things, including the overtime special with Nick Bostrom.
And you know what we can do, Paul? We can do one of these things where on the post that has this episode, like below the paywall on my Substack post of it, there is a link that gives people a 20% discount to your newsletter. And below the paywall on yours is one that gives people a 20% link to ours. In other words, if you subscribe to either of our newsletters, if you're a paid subscriber to either of our newsletters, you get a 20% discount. Now I'm just running this by you now.
I think that's perfect. I asked.
Feel free to veto.
No,
yeah.
I would definitely be into that.
This is what we'll do forevermore. So thanks everybody.
Also, after paywall, you're going to give your conspiracy theories of the Trump shooting.
Oh, hold me to that. Hold me to that. It's not a theory. It's just something that was a little weird about the thing.
Very few conspiracy theorists say, "Here's a conspiracy theory." So this isn't a conspiracy theory. It's an observation, an inconsistency.
Yeah. Well, there were right-wing conspiracy theories of multiple shooters, which I mentioned to you before. But wait, I was going to say something. Also, if you want me to talk about the JFK assassination in overtime, nothing I would love more.
Yeah, that's we'll just put that in the bank. So whenever we're sort of running short of a conversation,
I'm ready.
Yeah, okay.
I'm available, folks.
Okay.
But wait, was I going to say? Damn, was I going to say something else? See that? There you go. It's Joe Biden territory. I don't want to melt down anymore in public.
What you just say is anyway, and then
anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is my entire impersonation of Joe Biden is, here's the deal. The idea. Anyway.
Bunch of malarkey.
Oh, I forgot that.
You need to think the malarkey is the line.
Anyway, he did the right thing. I think. And my hat's off to him. I think he'll be glad. I think Kamala's got momentum. Oh, that was it. Were we going to, did I want to predict it? Oh, I just wanted to say that's it. The idea of predicting what's going to be the case in 2 or 3 weeks just feels more interesting at this moment than it would have, I don't know, years ago, months ago, because things have been happening so fast. And it's like you did a podcast with the American Prestige guys, and they were saying the assassination, you barely remember the assassination attempt. It didn't change much. It got obscured by subsequent events. Things are just happening so fast. Who knows?
Yep. My prediction is this, and I hate to say this, but small-scale thermonuclear war.
That's one of those things that you go out on a limb, and if you nail it, people are like, whoa, I wish I wasn't dead because I would really hail his predictive powers.
That's right. That's right. This is the problem with maybe a P Doom, guys, which is you say you bet on it, but if they're right,
who's going to collect? Right. Well, that's the answer to Tyler Cowen.
Yeah.
Why short the market if you're going to be dead? I'm glad you gave me that. Okay. So thanks everybody who's listened so far. If you want to listen to the rest, become a member or whatever at one of the 2 finest newsletters on all of Substack.